I am so excited to be here, part of the MBA Spotlight Fair, and talking with you about the MBA application. Our topic is very specific today in terms of those individuals who have experienced some kind of setback, as well as those who are looking to not experience setback. How can you maximize your outcome? The session is definitely for a lot of different audiences. So I'm happy to be here and talk with you a bit about, how MBA applications are evaluated and how can you make sure that you make the most out of your preparation process to have obviously a positive outcome. Before we dive into the session, I want to just do a bit of introduction about myself, especially for those of you who do not know me. We definitely have a larger audience here than I'm accustomed to in terms of my own YouTube or SIA Admissions YouTube channel. But a bit of a background. SIA Admissions is a boutique admission coaching firm who focus on supporting applicants through tailored coaching in putting together an application that is reflective of their experiences in an authentic way for the business school admission process. Our coaching process here at SIA is very customized to the individual and their individual strengths, and our focus is always making sure that we understand the individuals we're working with on a one-on-one basis, and help them present those experiences, their value add to a business school audience. I am the founder of SIA Admissions. I'm an alumnus of NYU and Yale, and I've been doing this for over 8 years as a coach. And my focus is, and when I started the business, is really making sure that individuals that go through our process are leaving no stones unturned in terms of putting together an application. As such, we've helped quite a lot of applicants find great success at top 20 and M7 programs. And I'm really excited to share that knowledge that I've garnered over the years in answering today's questions and presenting today's topic. In terms of our session, it's going to be very much focused on obviously one's profile, so you can ask quite a bit of questions, and I do ask you that you write your questions directly in the Q&A. Please don't use the chat because I will not be monitoring that. I will be monitoring the Q&A. So write your questions in the Q&A, and then I will be looking at those as we proceed in our session, and obviously answer questions along the way. I do prefer personally that I have a session that is lively and or viewers are asking a lot of questions. So please feel free to write your questions as I'm presenting, and I will be monitoring my other screen on this side on my right to look at any questions that pop up so that I can be answering those as we progress. Okay, so with that, why don't we dive right in? So who is this session for? As I talked about, this session is for a lot of different candidates. So anyone that has experienced any kind of setback in their career, whether that's academic career, professional career, application process, right? So if you have applied in round one and have already received rejections from the interview invitation category of decisions, definitely this session is for you. If you applied last year and you're looking to reapply this year or the year before that and reapply again, this session is definitely for you. If you're also applying to round two or round three or as a deferred applicant for the first time, this session can help you make sure that you are providing the right resources, presenting yourself in the right way, and even more importantly, evaluating where your candidacy lies in terms of making sure that you are avoiding those pitfalls that applicants typically experience. And also, if you're sort of an early stage of your application and thinking about an MBA and considering, okay, how do I build a profile that is going to be competitive for a top 20, an M7, so the mega elite 7 business schools? How do I put together an application for that? this session is for you as well. So a lot of different audiences in terms of content that can be useful too. And as a reminder, as we go through this process, please write your questions in the Q&A so I can monitor those specifically. For those who have been rejected, whether last year or in round one, I do want you to know and remember that one, rejections are common, and also reapplications are common, and you must think of them as a opportunity um, to represent yourself, reassess your candidacy, and represent yourself to business schools. A rejection from a singular school does not mean that you cannot reapply to that particular school. So, for example, if you've applied to Harvard, um, Harvard is it notoriously accepts applicants second time around, right? I think 20% of those admitted are reapplicants. So I really don't want you to be discouraged if you are a reapplicant, to really consider holistically what is it that you want and which business schools are right for you. It is really important that you understand what your fit, like what is important to you, and matching that with what's important to the business school. I definitely discourage only looking at ranks, because there's always that culture fit that can lack, that may lead to a rejection, essentially, that you want to definitely keep in mind as you go through this. So first, evaluating your profile, and then second, choosing the right schools for you. If you want a deeper conversation on how to choose the right school, I definitely encourage you to go to my YouTube channel. I do have events focused on school selection, which I'm not going to focus on that today, but that's definitely a topic that's important in this application process. So let's analyze setbacks. So what does a setback look like in terms of an application? So the most common setback that I've seen over my admission career has been applicants who have had unrealistic goals. Mostly, this is the one element that I see quite often. And what do I mean by unrealistic goals? I mean essentially individuals who are inspired by aspirational spaces that does not necessarily align with their past experiences. So this means, we've often hear, private equity, for example, is such a hot place to be. You make a lot of money. Obviously, it's a very romanticized place to work in. And applicants think that when they apply to business school, that they have to have the highest aspirations that they can imagine in terms of how you present the story. Or sometimes I see applicants who the sort of the logical progression between what happens in short term and how they get to the long term plan is not very clear. It's really important that you have very clear, attainable career goals in your applications to make sure that you are able to convert, excuse me, to an offer of admission. Excuse me. Okay. The next component that it's also very important that can sometimes lead to setback is a lack of demonstrated impact. I see this quite often when applicants write essentially a resume, for example, where all they share is the impact. And I know this might sound contradictory, but it doesn't actually come across as someone who has themselves made that impact happen, or it doesn't show how they themselves contributed to the greater impact. So schools want to know what the impact looks like from the perspective of the collective, as in your team, you and your team, or you in the company. However, what they care about is you. They want to know how you show up, what you contribute, what your value add is. And they do need to see that you are someone who has specific contributions, and how have those specific contributions led to success, right? And that can be in your employment, so in the job that you've held, jobs that you've held since college, as well as in your um, extracurricular experiences. So this could be volunteer work that you've done while you were in college, or any one of those experiences. Demonstrated impact can also be in your essays. So that could be the examples that you're choosing to use in terms of them, like illustrating what your point is that you're trying to put across. So when it comes to demonstrated impact, it actually kind of covers the entire application, not just one specific area. So do pay attention to how you have presented yourself, and analyze how have you been presenting yourself. Is it reflective of actually your contribution? Because one of the most common conversations I have with applicants that I go through the process of helping them present their story is, when I speak to them, they have an amazing story, but when I see what they've written, it's like there's a disconnect. So definitely you need to be able to take the time to actually articulate that in an application in a written form before you are even invited to interview. Because if your application does not reflect this impact that they're looking for, you won't get a chance to actually talk about it and be able to share what your value add is. Okay, I see some questions here. How do I leverage a gap year? Essentially, gap years, you will be needing to explain what have you been doing in that gap year. It obviously, if you say nothing, the admission team will assume that you are sitting on your couch and not doing anything. So it's an opportunity for you to share what your impact has been during that gap year. And we have here at SIA quite a few stories of successes in terms of being able to illustrate how gap years have been transformative on a mindset perspective for admission teams. How many of top 10 schools have GPA cutoffs, and would they bypass those cutoffs with a high enough GMAT score? There is no real cutoff. I would say though, like if you are below 2.5, it's really difficult. We have helped here at SIA applicants with a 2.5 get into an M7 or M7s, several of those. So it's possible, but obviously, definitely it will be, you would need a GMAT or GRE test score that is higher than average of that particular school that you're targeting, to be able to demonstrate that you are no longer that person you were in college with very low GPA scores. Okay, so perfect. Then another common setback, and as a reminder, um, uh, write your questions in the Q&A so that I can monitor and answer those questions along the way. So the third common setback is the insufficient school alignment. Um, Having worked in this space for so long, I have, sometimes say intuitive, but it's not really intuitive, is data backed uh, ability to see if someone matches the school's culture and the kinds of candidates that will be success there. And there are times that it's very clear whether someone will be able to convert that, and we always advise against that, against applying to a school where their alignment is not there. And where some oftentimes where applicants should be paying attention to some of the schools where the alignment is very evident, and they may not have looked at that particular school. When there is an alignment between the candidate and the school, the application process is so much easier. You feel like you're in your element when you're writing the application. So if you have experienced setback, I would encourage you to really look at which schools have you selected. Like I said, you can go definitely to our YouTube channel, See Admissions, and look at how to select the school videos that can be helpful in that process. Obviously, wait until the session is over, and then you can go and rewatch those. And then, of course, academic performance. One of the questions that I answered earlier was around academic performance. So, how is your GPA? Where did you obtain your undergraduate degree from? Caliber of institution, strength of program. It's also part of the evaluation criteria. So, for example, someone who has obtained a 3.0 at an Ivy League versus someone who has a like a 3.7 at a community college. And there's nothing wrong with community college, but the caliber and the expectations are different between those schools. So the that element is evaluated in one's candidacy, right? And if you are someone who has a really low GPA as well as a really low GMAT or GRE, that can absolutely tarnish your chances of being admitted to a top 20 M7 business school. Um, do you guys need need me to clarify what an M7 is, or which schools fall into the M7? If you do, please write it in the questions. Um, so so as I was answering the previous question, the if you have a very low GPA, and your GMAT or GRE is average or below, it's not strong enough, and that can lead to rejection. So your best bet is to obviously try to get the higher score. But if you can't get a higher score, look for ways that you can strengthen your candidacy. So this means you can take a class that helps demonstrate that you are a strong candidate. This can be like the best class in that category would be Harvard Business School's core program. Um, it's uh, it's a program that takes about 12 to 17 weeks to complete. It's very rigorous. I believe it requires anything from 10 to 15 hours a week of study time. You have to actually pass an exam with at least an 80% to be able to get the certificate. So that, from an admission perspective, obviously it's Harvard caliber of rigor in this program. And given the fact that you have to be graded, is indicative to them that this is more reflective of your capabilities in the classroom. And sometimes applicants who have a really hard time taking tests, this can be a way that you can mitigate. Obviously, this one is the most challenging one, also the most expensive one in terms of like the payment to get the certificate. So another way that you can do this is Berkeley has an extension school, and the extension school offers math for management. That is a slightly easier program that you can enroll in and pass the test and share that with the admission team too. So this again, all these components can help with your candidacy. If you have a CFA or any one of those like quite rigorous academic preparation programs that have gone through the process, obviously that too will be helpful in terms of demonstrating academic aptitude. Oftentimes, if you're not applying in consulting, the academic performance is evaluated based on what the admission team thinks that you can, how successful you'll be able to be in the program. So if you have low GPA, low GMAT or GRE, don't have any kind of additional courses that you're presenting to them, well, they will essentially take what you present in front of them as your best version of you. Therefore, if your best version of you is not up to par with what they're expecting, they will say that, you know, you are a good candidate, but you are going to have a really hard time here, and you may end up not completing the program. Therefore, we will choose someone we are more confident in their ability to succeed. Right? It's quite pragmatic, not really personal in terms of the decision process, but obviously it affects you personally in the outcome itself. And sometimes this can be actually opportunity for applicants to reflect, do they want to apply this year or apply next year, when you may have a chance to actually have a much stronger application. Okay, so now some self-reflection techniques. Um, you really want to be objective. I know that this is really hard to go through a rejection or go through the process of just evaluating your candidacy, because you are living your life, right? And you have lived your experiences. So being objective can be a very difficult process. But it really does require to be objective of your own experiences. If you are looking at your application, as in you're submitting an application, or you have applied previously and are reapplying, look to make sure that you have had or you have clarity in your application. So, is it clear what it is that you bring to the community, what it is that you want to do? Make sure that you are demonstrating impact. So, what impact have you had in your career so far? What are those effectively communicated in the application process, and are they relevant or related to in any way to your career goals themselves? Obviously, school fit is important. When you look at your application, does it look like someone who would be graduating from MIT, for example? Or does it look like someone like you match that, the vibe, if you will, of NYU Stern? The school fit is really important. And this is why when we go through this process with applicants, we actually have the selection quite early, school selection quite early, because the fit is an important component in making sure that everything you write is in alignment with the school's value system, right? And when we look at, I mentioned earlier, the GPA, where do you stack up in terms of your candidacy? Are you above average in years of work experience, in GPA, in GMAT or GRE? Are you overrepresented in terms of candidate pools? Are you coming from an industry that they see a lot of applicants come in from? So think consulting, financial services. Are those places that you are coming in? And so how can you differentiate yourself? Anytime that there is a crowd, right? You have to remember that business schools are trying to put together a class that is as diverse as it can be, with the intention that whoever goes through this program is going to have a easier time getting a job, whether that's transitioning to a new industry or growing within their current industry. So they're evaluating you from those two perspectives. What can you bring that's different from the next consultant that has the same experiences as you, for example? Are you going to be able to succeed academically? Are you going to fall behind, that you won't be able to go through the recruiting process? You won't be able to really enjoy and build connections with students. What are you bringing to the table, right? How are other students going to get value from you? Because most of the classes are, most of your learning happens between one another in terms of the discussions that occur and the experiences that you share. So this is a component that you're going to have to evaluate in terms of your candidacy. Um, and if you have been rejected, but even if you haven't been rejected and you are talking with students, with alumni, with admission representatives, definitely have a chance and look at sort of how they're reacting to your background, your experiences. Are they excited? Are they somewhat doubtful of what you're trying to do? That is indicative of the success that you're going to have in an MBA application. It's, of course, when it comes to students and alumni, they most often see their experiences from a particular lens, or see an applicant's profile from a particular lens, which is their peer group and their own application. But from the admission team, if you can get a feedback from them, that's really valuable, because they're looking at your candidacy from the perspective of how do you compare to other people that we have seen in the past in terms of success, and what their mission and goals are for that given year. In cases you don't have this opportunity, it's really important to have expert support and advice on your candidacy, and how do you stack up in terms of what they have seen. Obviously, every admission firm is going to have also a limited pool, but it will be much more robust in terms of the years that they've seen the successes, than, let's say, your friends who were rejected or who were accepted into specific programs. So if you are interested in discussing how we at C Admissions can support you through refining your application strategy and identifying areas that you need to work on, and kind of guide you through that entire process, definitely reach out. You have a link in the resources page too that you can book a free consultation, no obligation. And it's an opportunity for us to really discuss your candidacy and how we can support you in this journey. Okay. Oh, I see a question about applying for a second MBA. It's a really good question. As a second MBA applicant, oftentimes the reason why you're getting a second MBA is because obviously the first one didn't give you what you wanted. Doesn't have the resources, you're looking to make pivots. So, because of that, you do want to make sure that you have a very clear uh, presentation as to why do you need a second MBA. This is very important because if you're not able to articulate that, the admission team will say, well, you're not ready for a second MBA. So do make sure that you are, clearly articulating why you need a second MBA. What is the second MBA going to give you that the first one didn't? And how is that second MBA going to further propel your career forward to where you want it to go? And that will come through in your, obviously, in your application, in your goals essays, and also obviously in all the short answer questions. Kind of like it's across the board in various different segments of the application. So let's talk about a recovery plan if you have experienced setbacks, right? So what should you do? First, you're going to start with the reevaluation. So I mentioned the things that you need to go through to evaluate your candidacy. Go through each one of those, and there will be a playback of this for some amount of time. But you can definitely uh, rewatch this session and look at what have you, where your potential weaknesses lie, and particularly make sure that your goals are in alignment with what's possible. And of course, look at how you align with your target business school. Do you want to reapply, especially as a reapplicant, to that same school? Or do you want to apply to other schools that are more in alignment with what is more important to you? If you're applying for the first time, is your school selection in alignment with what's important to you? And I really discourage applicants to really only think about rank. And I personally have experienced the value of a brand name, so I'm not discounting that whatsoever. But it has to be a match between your personality and the personality of the school. If it's not a match, your probability of getting in is going to be very, very slim. So you want to make sure that you are putting your efforts in the right place that's going to give you the maximum ROI at the end of the day. In the plan, you want to look at enhancing your profile. Now, if you're applying to round 2 with a month and a half away until deadlines, you're probably not going to have enough time to enhance anything other than maybe retake another GMAT or GRE. So the enhancement component is not going to be very possible. However, if you're applying in round 3, if you're a deferred applicant, if you're applying next year, you do have time to enhance your profile and look at opportunities that allow you to enhance your profile. So, for example, if you didn't have a lot of leadership experience, what are some opportunities to demonstrate that leadership experience? Do you have professional impact? So, whether that's in your work, whether that's in your volunteer, do you have volunteer involvement, right? Community involvement. If you work in a sector that requires a lot of your time, well, maybe you may not necessarily be able to go to an external place to volunteer. However, you can volunteer, you can work on initiatives that are considered sort of pro bono within your own firm. So there's ways that you can be still involved in your own firm while you're working a lot of hours, and still be of impact on a pro bono basis. So really do look at how you can enhance your profile across the different experiences. And it's important that you obviously, define as much as you can a theme as to what's important to you. What's your value system? What's your value base? Are you someone who cares about um, financial accessibility? Are you someone who cares about making sure that the right people are placed in the right jobs so that they can have success, which means the department has success or the company has success? Are you someone who cares about the environment and the energy space? Are you someone who cares about supporting the right kind of businesses as a private equity investor or venture capitalist, right? So think of yourself as an individual that has a value system that is beyond oneself, caring about the world, caring about the communities that you are part of, and then look for opportunities that help you demonstrate that in your applications. I think there's okay. Um, So there's a question about the costs for consultation. So it depends on what you're looking for. If you're looking for um, consultations that is comprehensive, so end to end, this will start for C admissions at 8,000. If you're looking for hourly, we have a few different packages on that front, so we can definitely talk about those. Um, and we can talk about the process and what it entails. So if you want to talk about those components, I encourage you to schedule a consultation. There's no obligation in terms of making a commitment, and it allows you to see what's available. And as you're evaluating other consulting firms, you can see the pros and cons of each one of them. Okay, so let's continue. You want to close the gap between where you currently are and where you want to be in terms of demonstrating a strong candidacy. So if your test is not where it needs to be, retake the test. If you are applying to round two and you feel that you don't have time to get the test that you need, you have a score, but it's not the score that you know you can get. You can plan for some schools, not all. So you have to know which schools you're applying to, but you can retake the test within a couple of weeks of your submission, after your submission rather, and submit then an update to the admission team. And I say a couple of weeks because the further you are in the process of your profile being evaluated, the less likely it is that your new score will have an impact on the outcome because decisions may have already been made in terms of you are in the to be considered pile or are you in the reject pile. If you are applying later, meaning you're not applying in a month and a half, you have a little bit more time. Look at what are opportunities that are within your spaces that you're currently in. So that means with your employer, are there ways that you can increase your responsibilities without necessarily getting a job or a pay raise or job title change? Especially sometimes, especially some markets are like not necessarily raises are not happening, you can still demonstrate an increase in responsibility that can impact your application without that. What are some achievements that you want to make sure that you can communicate in your applications? Um, that would be something that you want to focus on, right, as you go through the next several months until you submit your application. Community service. What are some community service opportunities that you can take advantage of that can help you enhance your uh, help you enhance your leadership skills, can help you enhance your candidacy in terms of your application, can help showcase that you are someone who has convictions that are beyond making money. And there's nothing wrong with making money, but business schools are looking for leaders who are going to be of impact and who see themselves as change makers in the world. So you must demonstrate that you are that kind of person if you are targeting a top 20 business school. Sorry, one second. So, in terms of planning and support, what can be helpful for some applicants, not everyone needs this, of course, just like nothing in life, right? Or everything in life, right? There's people who need some support and others who not don't necessarily do, or some who need minimal versus some who need a lot more. But when you are considering, if you are considering working with someone, you want to really be considering working with them in helping you assess your profile if you are a reapplicant. We have done this so many times, looking at what your applications have looked like previously and where are some areas for improvement. Um, uh, Whoever you work with, you want them to help you build an action plan and obviously keep you to task, keep you accountable to your own commitments in terms of ensuring that you have a successful application or reapplication, depending on where you stand in that process. In terms of how much support you get, how much structure there is dependent on also, of course, if that's something that you prefer, if that's something that's helpful for you. Our process here at SIA is very rigorous in that regard, that we have a plan and we have, very clear delineation of when this different steps need to take place in order for you to find the success that you need. Obviously, everything is iterative and you know that you need time to develop a profile, and that's taking into account when we build the plan for the applicants we work with. All right, so oftentimes as you go through this process, we see this so many times where you're reading blogs and you're watching videos and you are hearing different people's perspectives on this process, and sometimes this can be motivating and other times it can be really demotivating. Uh, a part of your journey as an MBA applicant is to build resilience and be motivated, stay motivated and focused. Or if you're not motivated, just focus in terms of where you want to go and how you're going to get there, right? Any setbacks that you experience, whether that's an application or a job, job search, or any experiences that you may have along this journey where you're seeing as a setback, you want to really look at it as a growth opportunity. So you do want to cultivate that mindset as you're going through this process, which means, okay, I didn't get this job. What can I learn from it? How did I approach it? And how can I approach it differently next time? I asked my boss for a raise. Okay, how did I approach it? How can I approach it differently next time? Right? What can I do to make sure that next time I ask, it's a different conversation? Right? And this is about self awareness, most importantly than anything else. And then it's about, of course, how you present that to someone you're trying to communicate that to, whether that's your boss, whether that's a potential employer, the admission team, someone who is a potential place that you can volunteer at. Obviously, it's important. Time management, especially if you're applying even next year or in round 3, time management, it's real. Like, you have to really be focused on your on making sure that you have a plan and you're doing things every single day to moving the needle closer to presenting a stronger candidacy in your application. And that means your write-ups, as well as or written materials, as well as obviously the actions you need to take. um, if you think about it, we are 10, 11 months away from round 1 next year, right? That's not a lot of time. And you do want to have uh, a plan of action and make sure that you are making the most of the time that you have, and focus on small wins. uh, Sometimes we have a tendency of just thinking, well, I only consider myself as a winner if I get in. And yes, of course, we all want that, and I as a coach want every single one of my clients to get into every single school they apply to. However, we also need to be realistic, right? If you cultivate this mindset of celebrating the fact that you worked for 30 minutes on your resume, that will help you keep focused and be motivated to continue to work on it. So don't just expect, oh, I'm going to celebrate once everything is done. Celebrate small and then make the bigger celebration once you get there. Okay, so let's see what questions have come in that I didn't answer. So business schools don't have statement of purposes. They have prompt questions. A prompt that is being asking you to for a specific uh, question, you must demonstrate or you must illustrate it with an example. So make sure that you are writing an example that is capturing the character that you want the admission team to have. If it's a goals essay question, then you are going to want to really be specific as to how the school's resources, specific resources, which ones you're going to use, and how are those going to help you get to your goals. So the statement of purpose in a traditional sense does not necessarily apply to business schools, at least top 20. I can't speak for others. Okay, so can someone submit an unofficial transcript for admission process? Yes. That would be the transcript. For most schools, I think only Berkeley and UCLA require an official transcript. Most schools will require only an unofficial transcript. And then when you're admitted, you have to submit the official transcript, request the official transcript that is submitted from your institution that you completed your undergraduate or any other degrees that you received. And that would be sent to the admission team at that school. Obviously, this helps you save a little bit of money. Typically, in the United States, there's a fee associated with every request like that. So my degree is in a master's of economics, and I want to apply for an MBA in master. So an MBA. How can I get a recommendation, or who can I get the recommendation from? If you're in an if you're in a master's program and don't have, oh, you may be a deferred applicant. So I'm assuming you are in a master's program now and you're applying to an MBA as a deferred applicant. Yeah. So that if that's the case, then your recommender is going to be someone with whom you have done internship, or someone you have who has supervised, like a professor who has supervised your work in some way. So maybe you are part of a community service or like an extracurricular activity on campus, and there's an advisor for that extracurricular, and that advisor has seen you in action. That person would be a good person to write a letter of recommendation. Or if you've done an internship, the supervisor in your internship is a good person to write a letter of recommendation. Who's not a good person to write a letter of recommendation is a peer, someone who has only seen you in class and participating in class discussions. That's not necessarily someone who is going to move the needle in your application. Okay. All right. Having a support system, it's very important. And being able to answer your questions is very important. Staying motivated. I feel most of the time, a part of my job is to be a cheerleader for applicants who are going through this process, navigating their work, their full-time jobs, taking the tests, working on their applications. It's a lot, and having someone who is supporting you, being in a community of others who are also going through the same process as you, can definitely help you feel like you are not going through this alone, and can be definitely very beneficial. So it's great that you are part of this community, and it can be even better if you are part of a community where you get to actually speak to the people that are part of that space as well. Okay, so let's go to questions. Let me see. What did I miss? Okay, so what I really I'm struggling with is taking the IELTS or TOEFL exam. So is there any way that I can get an IELTS waiver during my application? I don't know if I fully understand the question, but I'll answer it to the best of my ability. So some schools do offer IELTS waivers, but you do have to demonstrate that your English is used on a daily basis. Maybe you can illustrate in some way. Perhaps your degree was in English or something like that. This is school dependent, so you have to make the request based on the schools. But typically they do need the actual test score. Now you can take a test and submit that and then update it afterwards. That can be a way that you can, after you submit, but you have to check to make sure that the school that you're applying to accepts resubmissions or updates to your application in the middle of the evaluation process. Okay. My manager has been navigating health issues this year and may not have the capacity to write me a recommendation letter. Is it a big red flag if my direct supervisor doesn't write my recommendation? I was planning on getting an indirect supervisor stakeholder. Yeah, that should be okay so long as you explain it. So I would have there's an optional. Every school in the top 20 gives you a space to either uh, in the application portal either talk about why have you chosen the recommenders you've chosen, and if it doesn't give you that, you have the optional essay, whereas you can write anything else that you didn't get to share elsewhere in the application, and you can explain it there that your direct supervisor does not have the capability because of health issues. Um, and I always recommend that if that you add a line in there that if you are admitted that and they choose to want to have a conversation with your direct supervisor, that they would be able to, that you would be happy to make that connection, and that would be okay. Excellent. All right, so we are in a Q&A. We have about 10 12 minutes left. If you have questions, time to write them in the chat. If you want to have a conversation with me one-on-one to discuss how we at C Admissions can support your application, then I invite you to reach out for a consultation. If you scan the barcode on the screen, that will lead you to the consultation call. Okay, let's see, what questions do we have? What can I do to strengthen my MBA profile if I am currently on a career break and will be without a full-time job for the next few months? Okay. I If you are in a career break, you would want to use this time to retool in some particular way. So I would be looking at what experiences do you want to be developing? Where do you want to be going? As in, like, what is your career going to look like pre-submission, to be able to demonstrate that you are a stronger candidate. Like I mentioned earlier, you should not be not doing anything, because that is a red flag for the admission team. So that means you can take classes, you can go on some kind of journey. There can be a lot of different things, and obviously, I don't know your profile enough to be able to say anything more than that. But definitely be able to do something that will allow you to communicate that in your application. I also discourage you from applying in a period of time when you do not have a job unless you were let go. Um, it can definitely be a challenge, especially as word on the street is that applications have increased this year and higher competition is going to be, for all those applicants that are submitting applications in round two. You don't want to have quote unquote red flags in your candidacy, because that will obviously impact decision outcomes. If you are without a job when you apply, that means, so let's say you're applying in round two, or you're considering applying in round two. If you're without a job, round two is in January, decisions come out, the end of March, early April. You won't be able to have really a job during that period of time, because classes start in August, right? So this means it's not going to be a couple of months, it's going to be close to a year. And you will have to explain that to employers every time you are going through recruiting. So it definitely makes it more challenging for you to get a job afterwards. So I would definitely discourage applying at a time when you don't have a job. Okay. Perfect. So I will be in the Q&A in 10 minutes, which is what if you heard a chime, that's what that is about. In 10 minutes, I will be in the Q&A. We can end the session here. I can just grab some water beforehand if you don't have any more questions. But definitely join me in the booth at 2 p.m. Eastern time. And I'll be happy to answer additional questions. and we can take it from there. So thank you so much for being here, for asking such wonderful questions. And I look forward to the one-on-ones that we'll have in a little bit. Like I said, if you have any if you want to discuss your specific applications and ways that our approach can help you, definitely reach out, schedule a call for us to talk through that process and see if there's a good match. Thanks again.